Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Big City Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Kearns. With me today, as always, is Slig. We have a lot to talk about today. Big football episode talking about our teams, the Giants, Bears, a little bit of Jets coming up later, and we're also going to dive into the playoffs and some of our picks going forward in that. But Slig, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you? Happy to be back here doing another episode, the Big City Sports Podcast, the BCS. Not the old college football format. Thought about being the Big Time Sports Podcast, BTS, but then a certain K-pop group might have sued us, so here we are.
All right, that's on that note. Let's dive right into the football content. The Giants had an interesting scenario, a lot of controversy surrounding their playoff hopes going into the Sunday night football game, and then something even more controversial happened. You heard Alan Chris on the NBC telecast really dive into what was taking place in front of their eyes, and it was a tough situation altogether. Where do you stand right now on the Giants side with what happened?
Man, yeah, I've given it a lot of thought, over the last 24 hours or so since the game ended. Being a Giants fan, being a fan of the team that was, you could argue intentionally kept out of the playoffs. I'm not going to deny that I have a biased perspective right here. Let me put that up front right now. It is very difficult. Now, I am not here to say that the 6-10 Giants deserve to be in the playoffs. They do not. And I'm also not here to say that the Eagles owe us anything. They don't. But it was also frustrating at the same time to watch how the Eagles kept us out of the playoffs. Now, again, controlling your own destiny. You want to say Giants should have won another game earlier in the season? That is 100% justified. Or you could go back and point at individual games like when Washington beat Pittsburgh, for example, or Ingram screwing us in the first Philadelphia game with a drop. Like, I get that. I'm not saying the Giants deserve to be in. At the same time, I think the argument about, they're 6-10, so it doesn't matter that they missed the playoffs. I don't agree with that aspect of it, because I still think it would be bullshit if the Giants or anyone else were 10-6 and they needed a little help, and the team that they needed help from looked competitive, was trying for 3 quarters, and then intentionally screwed them in the fourth. So I don't agree with that part of it. I'm trying not to be hypocritical here, but it is a little bit difficult. I am definitely not here to say that I am morally opposed to tanking or anything. In fact, I've encouraged it for both the Giants and the Knicks for a good chunk of my life. So I'm not criticizing Philadelphia for trying to move up in the draft order, which they did. The more I've thought about it, I don't think it's intentional just because it was the Giants. I think they would have done the same thing with if Dallas had beaten the Giants earlier in the day and they were the team needing Philadelphia to lose. But I definitely I don't love it either, because the Eagles did compete for 3 quarters. And when teams do tank, they don't usually intentionally rest their players in the fourth quarter to make sure that they lose. I mean, that's just one of the most graphic displays of tanking you will ever see outside of the Jets Raiders game a few weeks ago.
I have a weird approach to this. I don't think if the playoffs were on the line, if Washington clinched the division last week, somehow if they were to be the division winners, I don't think that game plan changes on the Eagles side. I mean, a lot of people are saying, yeah, they just want to screw the Giants. But honestly, if you look at the way they went into this game, they put a bunch of players on IR or ruled them out early on in the week, including Deshaun Jackson, who finally made an appearance last week, and a lot of names that were stars this year. They put them on IR or at least ruled them out. And then you have the scenario where Jalen Hurts sits out. That was obviously the big eyebrow raiser. 7 of 20 passing he left the game at. Now, I'm not going to say his performance was the reason you put Sudfeld in, but they came into the game. You heard Al Michaels say that they wanted to get Sudfeld reps in this game. They just didn't know when it would be. So that was their game plan all around, and I don't think playoffs would have had any impact on this game.
I think there is some truth to that. At the same time, even from the Eagles' perspective, I do have some questions about it. So, ignoring the Giants' aspect of missing the playoffs, which is why this is so controversial right now, I get that the Eagles ruled a lot of players out, some for precautionary reasons, some because they're actually injured, or some combination of both. I get that. So I'm not. I'm still thinking a couple different things though, because the Eagles also went into the week saying that they were playing to win. You're not going to put Nate Sudfeld in if you're playing to win. That is complete bullshit. I think we can all agree on that. And they also were going throughout the week saying, we want this to be a no hat game. Saying they didn't want Washington to be celebrating winning the division on their home field. And I was at least believing that aspect of it going into the week. You'll see that in any sport. You don't want a rival team to celebrate winning something you're achieving or striving for on your home field. That's just demoralizing. Now, I understand the Eagles were the only team eliminated in the division going into the week, but I definitely think there's two sides to it where they might have gotten Sudfeld reps regardless. But if the Eagles had gone in just saying they were going to play Sudfeld the whole game, or if they were going to give that approach where they were playing their backups the whole game, this controversy wouldn't be happening right now. The specific method of the Eagles' approach is what's so controversial, because Hurts' stat line, I don't think, told the whole story. He did lead them on 2 solid touchdown drives to give the Eagles the lead. The Eagles' defense got an interception in the third where they could have kicked a field goal to tie, or taken the lead with a touchdown. So they were definitely not playing to win. Peterson saying he put Sudfeld in coaching to win, not true. I think that can be confirmed. But at the same time, I do agree with saying the Giants weren't owed anything by the Eagles, and I'm not morally opposed to tanking or anything, but it does go both ways. It does go on both sides of on the coin. So I'm not saying the Giants are owed anything, but the Eagles' specific approach, I thought, was definitely at least disgraceful to an extent, because you're asking some veteran players, guys like Jason Kelsey and Zach Ertz in particular, who very well could have played their last games as Eagles last night, to put it all on the line. As coaches, you're asking them to give 100%, day in and day out, do anything they can to win football games. And then after 3/4 of a competitive game that the Eagles did have a chance to win, intentionally taking out your best quarterback for the night since Wentz was inactive, and putting in a 6th-round pick from a few years ago who'd thrown 25 career passes. So I definitely thought there was some criticism deserved on both sides of the argument.
Yeah, and I want to quote real quick Roni's Gambling Corner on Twitter. They posted a GIF of Jalen Hurts sitting on the sideline, and he's sitting there shaking his head saying, "It's not right." This was at the 13:46-minute mark of the fourth quarter, and he knows exactly what's taking place. He knows that they're going to play Sudfeld to see if he could back up Hurts next year, if they need to look outside for a potential other quarterback to bring in there. And it's just a really dicey situation there, because you have someone that's waited on the bench multiple times in his career. Alabama waited on the bench. He ended up transferring, of course, went to Oklahoma, won there, or at least won something, and then got to Philly, rode the bench behind Wentz, knowing he probably might have been the better quarterback at the time. I mean, every quarterback believes they're better than the other one, but he finally gets his chance, and here he is pulled when all he wants to do is play football and knock out a division foe that he hopes to do so multiple times in his career.
Yeah, I did see the gif of him saying it's not right after he got pulled. And there was another thing when Chase Young was interviewed after the game. They asked him something along the lines of, "Were you surprised when the Eagles went to Sudfeld?" He said, "I was, until I found out why." And the guy's like, "Well, why is that?" "Well, I'm going to keep that to myself. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything." And I said something about this on Twitter. I am truly happy for Ron Rivera and Alex Smith. I mean, they have overcome a lot. And I said a few weeks ago that I thought Washington was going to win the division. So I'm not here to try to take anything away from them. Notice how Washington is not even part of the criticism here. It's just, they have nothing to do with it. And I'm not blaming the Eagles players either. It's just mostly Doug Peterson that we're all mad at, right? I mean, it was just a very bizarre approach. I'm not, again, opposed to the tanking or saying they owe us anything. If the Eagles had just lost legitimately with Jalen Hurts, or went into the whole game playing the backups like Sudfeld, or even if they just fell down by like 17 or so or more in this game and they put him in, totally on board at that point. Or at least I'm not saying I'm not feeling like it's a personal thing against the Giants or possibly Dallas because the Eagles lost, but because of the specific method of doing it. And at the same time, I don't agree with the you want to get your QB2 or QB3 really reps in the last game of a season either. You have a rookie second round pick. I think that long term, you'd want to get him as many reps as possible. I know it's hard to make a snap judgment on a quarterback after he made what 4 or 5 starts for the Eagles, but you'd think you'd want to get as good a look at him as possible before this upcoming draft. If the Eagles, who have a very tough decision to make at quarterback with the Wentz and Hurts situation, what they're going to do in the draft, you could easily go out and sign a Tyrod Taylor type to be the backup quarterback in the offseason. So I don't buy that at all.
Yeah, one other thing. The media really blew up on the Jaguars for going to Mike Glennon when Gardner Minshew had something going. They're battling for the backup spot to Trevor Lawrence, I would assume. It depends on which one they want. The 6'6" one that sort of plays a style of Lawrence, or they want someone that's has a high upside, high risk with Gardner Minshew. But that we're not going to talk about that. Look, I mean, it's just so it's so tough to understand what all was taking place. But your spot right away on the Washington football team, they have to make a movie or write a book about this football team because one, they had to endure the name change, a lot of heat from the city of Washington, everything going on there. Then you hire a head coach who got diagnosed with cancer, beat cancer. You have a quarterback that goes in there. You have a catastrophic injury to Kyle Allen. No one's talking about that. That's a bad injury there. Dwayne Haskins, your first round pick from the year before, released. Alex Smith, after what all he's been through, his story to come back, lead that team to the playoffs, and play the best football with him under center. I mean, this is why we love sports. This story for the Washington football team is why we love sports. And I know this is a New York, Chicago style podcast, but we have to pay respect here to the Washington football team because you don't see these stories every day. And they have really done a great job of putting it all together there in Washington. Kudos to Ron Rivera for fighting. Kudos to Alex Smith for fighting. And I just hope that this just ends really nice for this football team because, yes, we don't like them at the end of the day, but this story is just so darn awesome to root for.
All right. Yeah, I'm not here to criticize, especially Rivera Smith. Those are the two guys I singled out for praise, and I 100% agree. I am very happy for both of them. But I also think that with Smith, especially, like they would have wanted to earn the division title. I don't think they would have wanted it handed to them on a silver platter, at least if they mean what they say in the media. I'm sure they're not going to complain that they won or they're in the playoffs, and that's well deserved. But I am happy for both of them. Congratulations to them. They still got some question marks in terms of the team name and the ownership, but they can worry about that after the playoffs are over. But with the Peterson thing, I did think some of the coaching decisions he made and the specific method of doing it only in the fourth quarter of a close game. I mean, I've literally seen more guts from people who have food poisoning. So I definitely did not care for that, but I'm not here to say that the Giants deserve to be in the playoffs. That they don't. That's completely understandable. Do we want to talk about the game against Dallas at all? Is it even worth it?
Yeah, let's dive into that real quick. So the Giants beat Dallas 23-19. I mean, it's the last game of the season, and they won their last game of the season. Usually in baseball, you hear the great line from Billy Beane and Moneyball: if you lose the last game of the season, nobody gives a shit. But the Giants won it. Granted, it wasn't on their terms, but regardless, let's take a deep dive into this. Daniel Jones played pretty solid football, 229 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Sterling Shepard showed out. We definitely showed his clip on the Big City Sports podcast on Twitter. That was just, I mean, he had a great day. Good for him because he's been up and down during his Giants tenure, battled with injuries, and to go out like that this year, it was really solid.
It did. I mean, I definitely liked what I saw from him. We could talk about the game a little bit. Yeah, at the end of the day, it only matters if you win your last game if you make the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you win your last game in the regular season, again, who cares? So but at least before the Washington Philadelphia controversy, that was the biggest game of Daniel Jones' career so far. I know there were only playoff implications on the line because the division is historically bad, but he played a solid game of football. The interception was obviously not his fault. I'll save the Ingram rant for another episode, but Jones and Shepard played well. The Giants offense came out, set the tone right away with a touchdown drive, looked solid in the first half, putting up 20 points for the first time since the second game against Philadelphia, I think in week 10. I mean, the offense has struggled all year. The defense did play very well after a couple of more subpar weeks against Cleveland and Baltimore. And I do want to give a special individual shout out to Leonard Williams, who was absolutely fantastic in this game. I believe he finished with 3 sacks, a couple of pressures. He had the pressure on Dalton that forced the interception at the end of the game. The Giants defense mostly bent but didn't break, only gave up 1 touchdown compared to 4 field goals. There were definitely some encouraging signs. It was great to see him battling hard to the last snap. Yeah, I definitely have some respect for that. And it was nice to beat Dallas for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid game. They got off to the fast start right away. You saw some nice play calling from offensive coordinator Jason Garrett. Look at him. This guy might end up being a head coach again. You see those rumors earlier this week?
I sure did. I saw some earlier tonight that the Chargers are interviewing him. Yeah, they can have him. Frankly, is still where I'm at. Because I like nothing personal against him, but I still don't overall agree with his what seems to be his offensive philosophy, and his offense. I don't think is the best fit for Daniel Jones. And if the rumors are true, where he does end up with the Chargers, it's not the best fit for Justin Herbert either. So I don't want to see that happen to him. But the Giants' offense, while it was better in this game, it was only better in the first half. They only scored 3 points in the second half, and a controversial 3 points at that, because Dante Pettis most likely trapped that ball against the ground. Dallas decided not to challenge. Graham Gano made the field goal to make it a 4-point game, and that ended up being huge because when the Cowboys were driving at the end, they got all the way to the Giants 6, I believe, well within field goal range. A field goal didn't help them anymore, so that eventually led to the Giants getting a turnover and Wayne Gallman giving us all a brief heart attack before the Giants held on.
Yeah. One thing real quick. I want to dive into the offensive MVP, defensive MVP for this Giants football team. And if you don't have it right away, I'm just going to give mine real quick. The offensive MVP, I think I'm going to give to Wayne Gallman. He stepped in, had a bigger role on this offense, and really stepped in for Saquon Barkley. Did a lot of great things for them. And on the defensive side, I think we both agree that James Bradbury is the player of the year on the defensive side. I mean, he really brought a lot to that defense. Wasn't too high on the free agents for both of us with the Bradbury signing, but it seems like that paid off well for him. Overall player, I think Graham Gano. You laugh, but he kept them in some football games and probably was the reason that they were where they are in this spot going into the Sunday game.
Oh, Gano was great. No question about that. Glad to bring a little stability to the kicker spot. Defense, I'm with you on Bradbury, although you could definitely make cases for Leonard Williams or Blake Martinez, who were both fantastic throughout the year. But I would give a slight edge to Bradbury, although Martinez did fill a huge hole in the middle that the Giants have had for a long time. On the offensive side of the ball, the Gallman was one of my first thoughts. He was outstanding, but I'm going to go a little off the board here and go with Nick Gates, the center. Yeah, I'm not saying he was the best center in the league or anything, but he was the only Giant to play every snap this season. This was his first full season playing center. He was originally signed as a swing tackle. He got better throughout the year, especially with, you're the center. You have to make the calls, adjust the protections, all of that. He didn't have a full training camp, practice, preseason like you normally would when you're switching positions. And he got better throughout the year, and I'm hoping he can build off that in the next year. So the offensive line was inconsistent most of the year. There were flashes here and there, but he did get better every week, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, and one more note before we transition into the Chicago Bears. I thought Xavier McKinney getting that pick, love what he put on social media too, going after Skip Bayless. We love to see that. Xavier McKinney, he really showed up late in the year. He's still a project. I think it might take a year or so for him to get his feet under him because he did come off a serious injury, but he looked well these 2 weeks that he's played.
They were definitely his best 2 games. Definitely looking forward to seeing a full season from him, hopefully. Glad to see him finish the year strong. And I'm always glad to see somebody rub it in Skip Bayless's face because, screw that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always loving on them Cowboys. Even with the loss, he's still loving on the Cowboys. But anyway, let's take a deep dive into the Chicago Bears. Once again, they lost to big brother Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. I mean, it's the same result every single time they play him, at least this year. The defense got shredded yet again. So those that thought Akeem Hicks was the reason they lost the first one, throw that out the window because it's the same scenario when the Bears played him again this time. But a lot of feelings where maybe the Bears could upset here because the offense was rolling these last few weeks. Granted, the defenses they played weren't great, and the defense was playing good enough. Roquan Smith's injury definitely didn't help, but the Bears, they made the playoffs regardless. What do you think of the Bears right now?
Well, I mean, hey, let's be fair here. I don't think it's fair to make the direction of this segment criticizing this one individual game. The big picture is they did get into the playoffs at 8-8, so we definitely need to focus on that. I think we'll go with it kind of the way we did with the Giants. We'll talk about the big picture thing first, and then we'll get into the individual game in a couple minutes here. Let's look at what happened. They managed to survive a 6-game losing streak in the middle of the season, and I know that the NFC is a little bit weaker this year because you see 8-8 Chicago, 7-9 Washington make it in, and the 10-6 Dolphins didn't in the AFC. But they did rebound at the end of the year when everything was working against them. So maybe it's a sign Nagy didn't lose the locker room, and they were able to show some resiliency, and they were able to sneak back in 8-8, finish the season pretty strong, winning 3 out of 4, and they got a matchup against the Saints next week.
Yeah, Ryan Pace used to be affiliated with the New Orleans Saints. He gets a little shot at revenge. Didn't beat him the first time. They lost in overtime with a field goal from Will Lutz, but that was a game Nick Foles started. The defense was still piecing it together, you could say. And of course, that was the infamous Javon Wims game. So maybe you see a little bit of that come back to where they're a little chirpy at the line. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson will not be not be too pleased to be facing these Bears receivers again.
No doubt, man. I mean, I think there's a couple things you got to look at here. We'll talk about the matchup for the Bears now. I think do that as part of the segment. It's difficult for a team to beat another team twice during the season for the most part. So I do not expect this to be a blowout when the game happens. I believe the game is Sunday afternoon for the Bears and the Saints. One of the big storylines for the Bears defensively is if Alvin Kamara is going to be off the COVID reserve list in time for the game. That'll obviously be a huge factor. The Saints should at least have the rest of their running backs back by then. Latavius Murray. I mean, I know they got decent production out of Ty Montgomery, who's played the running back position before, but I'm sure they would love to at least have Murray back if they cannot get Kamara. But the Bears defense, let's dive into that really quick because, like you mentioned, they have struggled a lot, especially since their bye week. Even in a couple of the Bears wins, you could definitely point at a couple different factors with the some of the overpaid pass rushers who didn't get a ton of sacks on the year. Especially with the Robert Quinn signing, I think is the one that really sticks out. Eddie Jackson got a big extension and he didn't have his best season. I know we haven't really talked about that a lot, but yeah, that's not an encouraging sign. And then you also have to look at our, the health statuses of Roquan Smith, who left week 17 early, and Jalen Johnson, who had a solid rookie year, but he's been out the last 3 weeks. Are they going to be ready to go?
Yeah, this is definitely interesting because this matchup has a lot to play. You mentioned the running backs. Could we potentially see a Ty Montgomery, David Montgomery running back scenario there with the two names? But David Montgomery, obviously this year didn't have the best year early on in the season, but one of his best games early on was against the Saints team, who is a very good run defense. You saw them going up. I mean, they were one at the time going up against a Denver team without a quarterback, and they tried running and couldn't get anything going. As expected, you're not going to run the entire game. I mean, everyone knows you can stack the box. But anyway, I just feel like this Bears team can put up a fight here. You mentioned how it's the second time around. It's hard to win twice. The Bears have momentum on offense. And look, this Saints defense has been very good down the stretch. I mean, they've been insane. You're getting pass rush production out of everybody, and they're getting home. That Robert Quinn signing is going to pay dividends going into this week, and it has all year. I think Ryan Pace is gone regardless of what takes place in these playoffs, potentially maybe without a Super Bowl ring. If he has a shiny ring, he stays. If not, it's going to be Matt Nagy returning with a new GM in town. A lot of GM openings in the NFL right now.
There are the Bears' offseason direction here is about as clear as mud. I mean, they have had such a roller coaster season. There have been rumors flying about Pace and Nagy and Trubisky and what they're going to do in the offseason. And now the Bears are going to most likely draft in the 20s now that they made the playoffs. So if they do decide they want to get a quarterback this year, it's going to be more difficult for them to get one at the top of the draft unless they make a trade. So there are definitely a lot of questions that we're going to start to see some answers for after the playoffs, and I definitely look forward to getting into that. The Bears offensively, there's two things I want to mention here. First of all, Darnell Mooney also left Week 17 early, and we got to see what his health status is because I've been harping on him the whole season, like hyping him up, saying I think he was going to be a good part of the Bears offense. I think he was, and you can see his importance to the team. So I'm hoping that he'll be healthy enough to play in the playoff game. The Bears could definitely use his deep threat ability. And outside of that, Montgomery, I think his surge, you mentioned that he was good in the first Saints game. I think that was the turning point for him because he looked like a completely different running back the rest of the season. We did see Trubisky play a few solid games. He wasn't quite as good here against the Packers, but the Bears did hang tough for well over 3 quarters here. I don't think the final score was entirely representative of how competitive the game was.
Yeah, it was 21-16 for the longest time. I mean, going down late in the game, but I mean, this is going to be a fun matchup, I think. They definitely have the ability to upset. I brought it up before. I want to give you credit though. I went back and watched the season preview of the NFL. You said Darnell Mooney would take Ted Ginn Jr.'s job. That's how good he is coming out. And sure enough, Ted Ginn's sitting on the couch watching the Bears play, and Darnell Mooney, if he's healthy, will be starting at the number 2 receiver spot. So kudos to you on getting that one right.
I appreciate the ego boost, man. It's good to talk about the ones that make me look smart, not the ones that make me look stupid. So yeah, but I do think that he's been an important part of the Bears offense. I do want to focus on Week 17 just a little bit here. The Bears, it started to get away from them finally in the fourth after a failed fourth down attempt when they had a chance to take the lead. But I do respect the aggressiveness there. Overall, though, I thought there was a bit of a regression in Nagy's play calling here because there were Trubisky hardly threw any passes more than 10 yards down the field. He, I believe, completed 2 of 7 that traveled at least 10 yards, which is a huge reduction in completions and attempts. Almost all of these attempts were shorter passes, which just isn't as good for Trubisky. And it also is going to limit the run game's effectiveness because you're going to have more defenders closer to the line of scrimmage. I still thought Montgomery played pretty well, but it did seem to me like Nagy had the approach of he didn't want Trubisky to lose this game for them. And I wouldn't say that he lost the game for them, but you didn't give him the opportunity to win the game for you either. You still got in thanks to some of the bizarre circumstances in that Arizona Rams game, but I'm not here to belittle the accomplishment. They got in the playoffs. Congratulations. But I was a little disappointed to see some of the regression in the play calling because the Bears, again, against not great defenses, finally started to shake some of those bad habits. And I don't think it's a coincidence that led to the offense finally looking rejuvenated after 3 months of hell.
I'm going to give a little prediction on this game going into it. If the Bears come out on top, I think it's going to be because Jimmy Graham gets a game-winning touchdown against his former team in New Orleans. Talk about something there. Sean Payton will be throwing his headset. Plus, the Saints aren't always the best in the playoffs. We've seen them slip up multiple times, a lot due to the referees, but we'll see if that has an impact here. Maybe you get a missed field goal in overtime, and they call something offsides that wasn't offsides. They nailed it this time off the upright and in. Maybe that's something you get going on for both teams.
I would definitely get a laugh out of it. I definitely think it's going to be a close game. I do not see this being a blowout one way or the other. I do think the health of the Bears that we talked about a few minutes ago is definitely going to be an important factor, though. I know that they will do everything they possibly can to be playing in a win or go home game here. And there's the questions about the Saints with Kamara as well. They did lose to the Vikings last year in their first playoff game, I believe. So, but I don't think judging the past performance is the right way to go here. The Saints have been hitting their stride, playing some very solid football, with the exception of the Eagles game 3 or 4 weeks ago. They've looked very good despite playing a couple different quarterbacks. So I do think they will pull out the win here, but I think it'll be 7-10 points at the most.
I think the Saints win too. But the thing here there's a lot of question marks. Drew Brees' health, he's looked a little bit better recently. The running back situation's a question mark. And how healthy is Michael Thomas? If Michael Thomas isn't healthy, you're going to have an old Emmanuel Sanders, who has looked nice. He's going to be locked up with Kyle Fuller. So that's going to be, I think, advantageous Bears there. You got Jalen Johnson on the other side, and it's going to be nice here. I think it sets up well for the Bears. If the Bears pull off the upset, they would be traveling to Green Bay. And do you think that that's a scenario where they might be able to edge them out the third time, or do you think that's a hat trick for the Packers?
I still think Green Bay is too good, but I'm going to go along the same logic. It's hard to beat a team once. It's hard to beat a team twice. It's really difficult to beat them three times. So the Bears theoretically should learn a little bit from each of the losses, alter their approach a little bit. But at the same time, it is going to be very difficult for them to go on the road against a very, very good team and knock them off. I don't think that would be a blowout if they do manage to advance to play Green Bay. I would definitely like to see the division rivalry just from a entertainment and fans standpoint, but I would be surprised if they knock off the Packers.
Absolutely. The Packers this year remind me, with the quarterback situation, the playoff history of a team like the New England Patriots and their run that they had with the quarterback of Tom Brady. So let's talk about the Patriots Jets a little bit and transition over to the New York Jets. The Jets didn't put up the best fight, but the main storyline here is Adam Gase got fired.
Yeah, that's really the only thing that matters. We've hammered about the offseason approach here the last couple episodes. We'll definitely get more into it after the playoffs wrap up and we start to get into the draft season even more. But yeah, Gase got fired. Let me put on my E-Trade baby shocked face. Hope you guys remember 2014 commercials here. But it's the right move. It's completely expected. We all know Adam Gase has not done a very good job as the Jets coach. So Joe Douglas has a huge decision to make here in terms of who he wants to bring in, and that coach, I'm sure, will have a voice in the ownership room as to how they want to approach this very important offseason for the future.
Yeah, it's definitely important because they have a lot of draft picks that's going to go to Joe Douglas, who's going to make these calls, get a new head coach in there. It seems like they're interviewing a lot of people already. I've seen Twitter notifications pop up all day about the Jets' potential hires. And I did see Adam Gase could potentially go to Alabama to be the offensive coordinator under Nick Saban. Do you think that's just overblown, or do you think it's a scenario?
Honestly, man, I think it's possible. They lost Steve Sarkisian, but who cares? I mean, I that really doesn't affect the Jets at all anymore. I'm not saying Gase won't get a job somewhere, but it definitely won't be a head coaching job. I know that much. I really hope that doesn't come back to prove me wrong here. But really quick, I do want to mention three of the names that the Jets have interviewed so far. I think it's going to be a wide-ranging search. We've seen. I mentioned Eric Bieniemy before as a potential target. He's one of the guys the Jets are interviewing. Another is Brian Dable, the Bills offensive coordinator, who I don't think would be a surprise if he ends up with a head coaching job with one of the 6 or 7 openings, I believe, in the NFL. And the last one is the Jets have requested permission to interview Patrick Graham. So I definitely think there is some truth to those rumors. The Jets would not be his only interview. I hope from a Giants fan perspective that he stays for one more year because the defense needs him. He did a great job, but I absolutely understand why he is getting that interview. If he does end up going for that, best of luck to him. But those are 3 big names that I did notice.
Yeah, I also think an underrated head coach that could end up getting a solid offer somewhere would be Matt Eberflus in Indianapolis. He's done a great job for that defense, and I think he's going to warrant a lot of conversation on the who's going to take over as a head coaching potential job.
Full disclosure here, I did see the Jets were going to interview him, but I was hoping you would say his name because I didn't know how to pronounce it off the top of my head. But I agree with you. I read the article on the New York Post not long before we started recording. The 3 names I mentioned were in there, and so was Eberflus and the Titans offensive coordinator as well. So it's going to be a wide-ranging interview, or a set of interviews. I do agree that he would be a very solid candidate. He's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, and we talked about offensive MVPs, defensive MVPs for the season for the Jets or for the Giants. Let's talk about the Jets. On the Jets side, the offensive MVP to me, he missed some time early on in the year. I think it's got to be Jamison Crowder. He's basically the only one that showed up for them on the outside. Him or the left tackle, Mekhi Becton, would be the 2 that I would give a look. On the defensive side, Uh, I mean, I guess you throw up Quentin Williams because that sticks. Maybe Marcus May, but he's been burnt toast most of the year as well. So it's just a wide ranging for that team.
To me, this is not a discussion. It's Becton and Quinn Williams. End of story.
Yeah, I mean they're the two pieces to build around. So at least that's something to look forward to in the future on the Jets for sure.
I agree. I mean, we've hammered the Jets a lot the last couple of weeks here. We've talked about how those two are building blocks, and for the most part, the rest of the roster is pretty terrible. So I'm very curious to see how the Jets approach free agency in the draft. But we'll enjoy the NFL playoffs first to see what they do coaching wise, and go from there.
So let's jump right into the NFL playoff brackets. You've already seen them on social media. We popped them up early on in the weeks. If not, check us out on our social media platforms on Twitter, Big City Sports PD. Let me pop that up in the bottom left. And outside of that, let's just dive right into it. We got the AFC, and we'll go through that first. We'll actually go. We'll go AFC. Let's start with the night game on Sunday Night Football between the Steelers and the Browns. What is your pick in this one, and what are some storylines to follow on this one?
Man, this one was actually my toughest pick going back and forth. First of all, happy for Cleveland and their fan base to finally get in the playoffs after 18 years. They've had a successful year overall, and I mean this honestly. I'm glad the loss to the Jets did not end up costing them a playoff spot. I know it wasn't great, but they were also missing their wide receivers. Look, I'm just going to go for it here. I think Pittsburgh's going to lose early, and it's just a gut feeling more than anything else. I'm picking the Browns here.
All right, Brownies. I'm rolling with the Steelers. I just feel like this Browns team they're both of these teams are not playing their best football these last few weeks. I think we could both agree on that point. But the Steelers, it just seems the win against the Colts fueled them a little bit. You didn't have Big Ben in the game against the Browns week 17. And the Browns, frankly, didn't play them as tough as I thought they would have. But I mean, it's just what plays did you show in week 17 that you could go literally the very next week and play the same team again? Plus, you had everyone in. It's going to be a tough matchup. I think it's going to be split down the middle, and I think this game might have overtime potential.
I would like to see it, man. I think that would be entertaining. I think it'll be close here. We're seeing a third matchup here. They split the two in the regular season, I believe. I know the Browns beat the Steelers yesterday with them resting some guys, but I do think Pittsburgh showed some vulnerability the last few weeks before they came back to life against the Colts. I'm not saying I always have the most logical football reason. Sometimes it's just listening to my gut. And I said Pittsburgh was going to lose early a few weeks ago. I didn't think Cleveland would be the best team for them to beat them, but I'm going to go with what I said back then. I got the Browns, just gut feeling.
Yeah, I always love picking with the gut. That's always the best. Don't look at the numbers. Don't look at anything. Just go right with the gut. And that leads us to our next one: the Indianapolis Colts at the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park. Bills fans are finally in the playoffs. This is going to be entertaining for sure. I believe they said they might be having tickets to this game to where Bills fans can attend. That's going to be fired up. I can't wait for this matchup. Bills Mafia is going to be fired up.
Man, if this was a normal year, or I guess we're in 2021 now, a normal 2-year stretch, I would be at that game without question. I still got friends and family in the Buffalo area. I've been to a handful of Bills games before, including the Colts-Bills snow game, actually, a few years ago. That was a really interesting experience. I was looking forward to going to a Bills home playoff game, even though I'm not a fan of them, just because it's a fun place to see a game, get some awesome wings and everything. I think the Colts are going to keep this really, really close. Like the Bills are running hot. They are playing their best football, but I expect a lot of points in this game. I do have Buffalo winning, but it's going to be a close game.
I picked the Colts early on in the year as one of my dark horses, and most recently I picked them as a diamond in the rough, like a team that could upset somebody. But them drawing the Bills in the first round is giving me a heart attack right now because Buffalo is clicking on all cylinders. That defense is healthy. I just feel like their offense is way too much for that Colts defense right now. I'm definitely going to lean Buffalo, and they're playing hot right now. I think if they would have gotten the first round bye, it might have tampered off what they've had going so far. And I think Kansas City definitely benefited off of that. Andy Reid off a bye. So that's huge for him. Both teams, I think it works. So I got Buffalo winning this one pretty handedly against the Colts.
Yeah, I got Buffalo. I think it'll be close, though. That Colts defense is legit. I think it will at least slow down the Bills a little.
All righty, let's get into our next one. We got Baltimore at Tennessee. This one's a little tough too. I just don't think the Titans defense is there. I mean, they're not there up there. They're not there out there. They're frankly just not there. Baltimore is also a team that's hot right now. I'm leaning with the Ravens flock. That win on Monday Night Football against the Browns really reignited that fire under that team.
Yeah, I got the Ravens as well. I think it's going to be more of a revenge game. They lost at home when they were the 1 seed to Tennessee last year. I think they're going to be out for blood here, and they should be. But Ravens are playing well. I do think Tennessee is legit, but I think Baltimore is going to be really motivated. They're going to go on the road and make a statement.
Let's head over to the NFC. The LA Rams going up against the Seattle Seahawks. I got the Seahawks winning this one. I just think Pete Carroll is a bad man when it comes to January. He puts it all together. They have so many running backs. Even Alex Collins got a touchdown. I mean, Rashad Penny's healthy. Chris Carson's there. Carlos Hyde's there. He had 1,000 yards last year. I mean, he's all over the place. I mean, they have so many running backs. The offense still needs some work, though, in my opinion. I mean,
Hey, don't forget about DJ Dallas, who started a couple of games.
Yeah, DJ Dallas pulling him out of nowhere. I mean, they have so many talented players on that team. One thing, if they put it all together, I know it's late in the year here, the defense struggled early. Everyone's like, what's up with Seattle's defense? They put it together these last few weeks, and the offense fell off. If the offense gets back and the defense plays mediocre, this team could be a very scary team in the playoffs.
They could. I do have the Seahawks here as well. I think a big storyline is just the health of Jared Goff. You know, the thumb injury last week, he missed the Rams game against Arizona. A side note, I loved watching that team with everything on the line with both teams playing a backup QB. I thought that was a really unique viewing experience, honestly. But I do have the Seahawks one way or the other. They split the two meetings regular season, but Seattle's the better team. They're at home. They should advance.
Yeah, and one more thing about Jared Goff, he went under the knife literally last week, so it's going to be tough for him to play. I'd honestly say that he's not going to play, but that's just strictly my gut. It's going to be hard for it, even if he is, he's limited. Because I know like the Tom Brady scenario when he played the Jags when he had the open cut on his hand. Remember that?
I mean, it was better than Trevor Bauer's blister game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, hey, Brady still, I mean, with some help, won that game. If Goff is even close to being ready to play, he will play. It's the playoffs. He can rest his thumb all he wants, especially if the Rams lose after one game.
Yeah. Anyway, we got the Bears Saints. Bears Saints. This time the game's going to be in New Orleans. It's going to be heading there with the Beads. Anyway, I got the Saints pulling this one out. We discussed this game earlier. I just feel like
we talked about it already. We agree on the Saints. What's the next game?
Yeah, we got Tampa Bay at Washington. I got the Bucks. I think the Bucks are putting it together these last few weeks. Washington, the story's great, but they can't keep up with Tom Brady.
Now, the defense, I think, will slow the Buccaneers down a little bit. You know, kind of like the Colts defense, I think could slow down Buffalo. I do have Tampa Bay winning as well, but I do not think this is going to be a blowout. This is definitely a bit of a trap game. I do have the Buccaneers.
Alrighty, let's head over to the AFC. You have the Browns Bills in that AFC first matchup in the semifinals there. What do you think that game is going to be like in the divisional game?
I think it would be really, really fun to see the Bills get another home playoff game. The Bills are playing some of their best football. Cleveland hasn't been quite as strong the last couple of weeks after that Monday night Baltimore game. I do think Buffalo would win that one by about 10, 14 points, somewhere in there, decently controlled.
Imagine a Browns-Bills divisional game to see who plays in the AFC Championship for a shot at a Super Bowl. That's something we all want to see. I had the Steelers winning that one, but I do have the Steelers losing to the Bills in this one. So the Bills are packing their things up. They're going to the AFC Championship game.
Okay. Now, at least we're on board with the Buffalo part.
Yeah. All righty. Going down to the other AFC divisional game, we have the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs. This matchup's always been good, and I'm excited for it.
I am too, man. I think Baltimore is going to keep this really, really close again. I know I've said that a lot, but I do have the Chiefs sort of moving on here. I think they're going to be too much for the Ravens.
I also have the Chiefs on that side. So we both have Bills Chiefs in the AFC title game. Let's head over to the NFC. We both have Seattle versus the Saints. What do you see in that one?
I got the Saints in that game. I as much as Seattle's got a lot of talent on that roster. I'm going back gut feeling here. I just don't think they're going to make a deeper run in the playoffs this year.
I got Seattle winning this one. I do. I just feel like, you know what I said, I stick to my team. I always stick to what I say at the beginning, especially when both teams are in it. Like I had Seattle's Chiefs. We both said that early on. but I really want to stick with this. I do, because I've been on
I
them from
get
the
it.
start. So I think I'm riding with this Seattle here.
I get it, man. I just gut feeling now is different from in August for me.
Absolutely.
That's it. Let's not overanalyze it. I got the Saints. Let's see what happens.
All right, we got Bucks, Packers. Both of us have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. Who gets the edge in this one?
Okay, I got to have some fun with this somewhere, right? I got the Buccaneers winning this game. I think one of the one seeds, either Kansas City or Green Bay, one of them is going to lose before the conference championship game. I don't have any football evidence to back that up, but the playoffs are a crapshoot, and Brady's had some success against Aaron Rodgers in his career, so I'm going Tampa Bay.
I'm picking Tampa Bay again too, because my gut is always history repeats itself. Look at who the Packers lost to last year. 49ers, a team that destroyed them in the regular season. And then they came back. Rodgers wanted to fight for him, and they just fell short. This is a very similar scenario. I just think history repeats itself. I'm going with the Buccaneers here. AFC Championship, Bills, Chiefs, who gets the edge?
Man, I would really like to see that game one way or the other here, man. I think that'd be fun. Now, I said it a couple weeks ago, last time we talked about the Bills. As much as I love them here, I think they're 1 year away from overtaking Kansas City. So I do have the Chiefs moving on in that game.
I also have the Chiefs, and you have Tampa Bay at New Orleans. I have Tampa Bay at Seattle. Who wins your NFC Championship game against the Saints?
So we've kind of hit on this earlier in the episode. The Saints have beaten Tampa Bay twice this season. It's difficult to do it 3 times. I'm picking the Buccaneers.
You got the Buccaneers, Chiefs, Brady, Mahomes in the Super Bowl. I'm sticking with Seattle. I do. I think they finally beat them here. I got Chiefs against Seattle in the Super Bowl. You have Chiefs against Tampa in the Super Bowl. Who is your Super Bowl champion?
I got the Chiefs, man. I don't see Tom Brady pulling it off because I still see a couple of flaws on that Buccaneers team. I think the Chiefs are the more well-rounded team, although I do think it would be close because Kansas City Tampa played earlier in the year. That game finished as a 3-point game, I believe, but I don't think that was entirely accurate. The Chiefs dominated that one pretty good for most of the game, and I think they are capable of doing that again.
Yeah, I have the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. This is where my pick's a little off. I had the Seahawks winning in the Super Bowl, but I think the Chiefs they're just too good right now. The thing about their team, I want to see them beat someone bad. They haven't done it except for the Jets, which everyone does, it seems like this year. But the Chiefs, I want to see them come out and beat someone bad. And I think even if they don't, they still have the offense to come back against anybody. It's just not a great method going into the postseason.
I mean, I feel like they've just been warming up, man. They've only lost 2 games all year, and one of them was with all the backups in against the Chargers yesterday. I think they've been saving an extra gear and that they will be ready to go, but they're also going to know that every team's going to give them their best shot to try to knock them off.
And for the poll question of the week on Twitter, you can find it at the Big City Sports PD. The thing here, we're going, who is the team that's going to win the Super Bowl, in your opinion? Let's go ahead and check. Chiefs, Bills, Packers, or the Saints, or other. So those are the 5 options for this week. Go ahead and check that out on Twitter. Outside of that, we don't have anything else for you today. We hit the nail on the head on this episode, and we gave you everything we had. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Check us out. We're now on Spotify, and eventually we'll be up on Apple Music. So we'll drop that on the link below to the page. If you want to listen to the show, please click on that and click like. Also subscribe to this channel and comment below. But once again, this is a Big City Sports Podcast, and Dylan Kern signing off. We will see you next time.